Hey everybody, you saw the thumbnail, so you know I'm leaving Facebook. I'm not just leaving, I'm deleting my whole account. The reason I'm doing a video is because this will affect the Autism Family Facebook page. There will be an alternative. I'll talk a little bit about that just in a second, so please be patient. I do want to start out by saying I am neither a Republican or a Democrat. Obviously, I have my biases and things like that. I try to stay away from politics as much as possible on our Autism Family page, but this video will be an exception. I just want to preface it that way so you know I'm not trying to persuade you one way or the other. So we're now living in a time where one bad tweet, one bad Facebook post, just one bad message could ruin your life. It could either be that you're doxxed or you're shamed on Facebook, or someone tries to ruin your career over it. There's all types of things that can happen from one bad tweet, as you guys are well aware of. And the crazy thing about that is it's not just temporary. If someone recognizes your face and it's been all spread all over social media and the news, that's the end of it for a long, long time. You might not be able to get another job if someone recognizes your face. So yeah, most people are willing to risk that being on Facebook or social media because they think they'll be the exception to the rule, that they won't get doxxed, that they won't have an online petition against them or things like that. With the most recent event surrounding George Floyd, what I thought about that is it was a sad event, of course, but I thought, hey, I'll be safe, right? Because I'm not racist, and most people know me and know that I love all God's children. Black, I've had black friends, Jewish friends, Asian friends, Mexican friends. And I think racism is stupid. I think it's like looking at someone's hair color, eye color, and saying, I'm not going to hang out with them because they have a different hair color than me. It's ridiculous. I even had a friend ask me to take a Harvard test to determine if I have any type of racism. Now, the test itself is inherently skewed, but beyond that, I passed it with flying colors. Maybe I should say full marks. I passed it with full marks. Bad pun. So, yeah, I thought that, hey, I'll be fine, right? Also, I was one of the first to speak out against corruption in any agency. I don't like corruption in any agency, whether it's police force or military or ATF, FBI, I don't care. Business, it doesn't matter. I don't think corruption has any place in any institution. Having said that, I do have a lot of respect for these institutions still. I think there needs to be some cobwebs dusted out and things like that, absolutely. But I was one of the first to speak out against it. So I'm safe, right? Well, recently I saw something on Facebook that made me realize no matter how skilled an orator I am, how good I am with words, how adept I am at navigating the minefield of Facebook and walking on eggshells, none of that really matters. Recently, many of you have seen the black square going around, and a lot of people, and what gave me pause is I saw a lot of people being shamed for not using the black square. Now, a lot of people think it's helpful. Some Black Lives Matter people think it isn't helpful. It's interfering with the movement. You should say Blackout Tuesday instead. Some people think it's really superficial and virtue signaling. And, there's all these varying degrees of how people feel about that. And whatever you feel about the black square is not really the point. That's not what I'm getting at. The point is that people are being shamed not only for what they do post, but for what they do not post. And I think that's really scary. I mean, understand the threshold we're crossing as a society where you can not only be shamed or hurt or have your life ruined over something you do say, but something you don't say. As someone who believes in the First Amendment and freedom of speech, I also believe in the freedom to not speak, similar to Miranda rights, right? We have the right to remain silent. And I think that should be okay. So why remain silent, especially when there's so much injustice happening in the world? Well, some people are bad with words, and that's okay. Some people want more information, more evidence before they say something. Not only is that okay, I think that's a wise idea. Again, some people are non-confrontational, and I think that's okay. They just don't want to get involved. Now, I do understand that oftentimes silence can mean compliance, especially when evil is taking place in the world. I often get frustrated when I see cowardice or people not standing up for the right thing, and it's like, why don't you say something? So I get that, but I do think we should always have that option available. And besides, I honestly don't think my Facebook, my messages and the way I feel about things has a whole lot of sway in the eternal aspect of things. I really don't, because I'll post something out there, someone will say something different, then you'll see a little argument ensue. I'm sure you've all been in that place where you just see a little Facebook fight start in one of your posts and you're like, that's not what I wanted. So yeah, many of you are familiar with cancel culture, meaning you cancel someone. It's a way of getting rid of them on social media and even in their careers. And I think it's a really dangerous thing to do. Imagine if you went on vacation for a couple of weeks and you were in a place that didn't have cell phone service or Wi-Fi access, and you come back and all of a sudden your whole social media pages are just littered with people calling you a coward, and you're a terrible person because you didn't comment on this, you didn't comment on that. And I just think that's a really dangerous game that people are playing. So yeah, even if you agree with this whole movement, and I do think a lot of it is a good movement as long as it's nonviolent, even if you agree with it, just imagine the next outrage, whether it's abortion or the Second Amendment or homosexuality or any controversial topic, and you don't agree with a social media mob and you don't say something, what happens to you? There have even been people, I mentioned doxing, that have had people come to their house and light fires and throw bricks and try to enter their homes. I mean, imagine that, like you post something and it causes so much outrage that a literal mob shows up at your house. And it's not paranoia, it has happened before to several people. So my grandmother used to have a good way of parenting when she said, let the punishment fit the crime. Meaning, make sure the punishment isn't too much, also make sure it isn't too little. And right now our default response as the court of public opinion is to just ruin someone's life. Like if they say something we don't like, and I get a lot of people will just argue in the comments, but there are people out there who literally want to ruin someone's life if they don't agree with their agenda. And that's a terrible way to address something. There's no due process. There's not enough evidence. There's just a lot of things wrong with that. I do want to point out that when I first started with Facebook, I loved all the possibilities of social media. I loved being able to connect with long lost cousins, organize family events, do genealogy, meet with people, share good messages, share some opinions even. I thought it was really cool, and we can still do that to some extent. But now I think Facebook and a lot of other social media platforms have kind of devolved into this fight club, for lack of a better term. People just go there to pick a fight. And maybe that's not the way it started out, but that's what it's becoming. Think about your experiences on Facebook and social media when you've interacted with people. Did you ever have someone say, oh my gosh, you're right. I've been wrong about this all along. Your words have completely changed my life. Or maybe you have. I have never experienced that. The most I've experienced from Facebook is someone saying, hey, you know what? Thanks, Rob. You've given me a lot to think about. Did it change their paradigm? Did it change the way they go through their life? I don't know. I kind of doubt it. I think most people go on Facebook or social media to have their biases confirmed. And when they aren't confirmed, they just lash out and then they get more set in their ways, more galvanized into their way of thinking. Beyond all of that, and this is the point where you're probably like, hey Rob, grab your tinfoil hat and your decoder sunglasses. Beyond all of that, I think there's something going on here that's a lot more nefarious. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory because it's happened so many times throughout history. You've all heard of the phrase divide and conquer. It's something that a lot of war commanders have used. It's very effective. As a religious person, I understand it's a tool of Satan. He likes to divide people, split them up. They form little tribes. They're all at each other's throats. Even the Lord said, and I don't want to get this wrong, so yeah, even the Savior said, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. So in addition to the Bible, there's a scripture in the Book of Mormon, Helaman chapter 1. I'll post some excerpts on the screen of what happened to a nation when it was at its most divided and its most weak, and they were attacked. And I would really encourage you to heed that warning. We are now at a time in our country, in the United States, I'm aware that this is an international platform. It could happen to any country, but I believe here in the United States there are people trying to divide our country, and a foreign entity will come in and attack. I don't know when that will happen. I don't even think it's a question of if. I just think we could see that in the upcoming years, maybe sooner, I don't know. So I can't name names. I wouldn't even really want to because, again, people would get very defensive. Like if I, mentioned George Soros or Donald Trump or Biden or whomever, people immediately already have their bias and then they'll just leap on that. I don't have enough evidence to convict anyone anyway. But what I do see is a pattern emerging where something will happen on the news and it's fear-based and it triggers that fear response and that anger response. and then it's spread all over the news. Now that's not enough. People regurgitate that news in social media, and then everyone starts talking about it, and it spreads like wildfire. It's happened so many times now that you can see a pattern, and I think that's being used as a tool of manipulation. So how does that divide us? Well, obviously in this most recent example, you see people who are either defending all black people and saying, all police are garbage, or you're seeing people who say, defend the blue line, we got to have police, give them a break, without really addressing corruption that might enter. And you have those two extremes, and you have everything in between. But right now, I think what you're seeing is a lot of people saying you have to pick one or the other. You can't have it both ways. And I believe that's false. I believe that arguments are much more nuanced. There's a lot more detail there. You can't just make blanket statements and saying this group is bad or this group is good. People are more complicated than that. But what you're seeing now is people divide into their own little groups. And that, I think, is what's causing that great division in our country. More than anything in the past, it has been fueled by social media. News obviously has been around for a long time. But I think social media has just taken that to the next level. So once that outrage has been fueled and the flames have been fanned, so to speak, what's the next step? The next step is either petitions or legislation that you wouldn't normally agree with. But due to the current circumstances and all the outrage and the fear that's happening, you kind of go along with it. You're like, yeah, something needs to be done about that. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't agree to the legislation. So an example far back would be like with TSA. We had the attacks on the 9/11 towers, and so everyone agreed to be searched at the airport. Now, whether you think that's right or wrong, if that's just security theater or if it's actually saved a lot of lives, I don't want to get into that. But the point is you agreed to something. Society, pretty much as a whole, agreed to do something about that, and they agreed to legislation, including invasion of privacy, the whole Edward Snowden thing, NSA, all of that. We agreed to give up a lot of our freedoms because we saw a threat. We were afraid. So I've got to say, and I'm including myself in this, I think society is being played like a cheap fiddle. I think we're all being manipulated, and most of us don't even realize it. I just keep seeing that same pattern of something happens, there's fear and there's outrage, it gets spread all over social media, new legislation is passed, a new thing happens, some outrage, something fear-based. People talk about it, more division, more legislation, so on and so forth, wash, rinse, repeat. But I don't want to play that game anymore. I think the game is rigged. And I think it doesn't matter now what we say or don't say. People are eventually going to come after us because we didn't toe the line. We didn't agree. Now, I might get on Facebook in the future if my work requires it. Sometimes you have occupations that require Facebook. I'd probably start a new Facebook account. I want to delete this one. I know Facebook keeps it in their servers. I understand that the internet is forever, but I'm just too tempted to get on there and make comments and posts, and it's just easier for me to remove the temptation entirely. So yeah, in effect, I want to cut my strings to the puppet master, if you want to call it the puppet master. I know that sounds a little bit, tinfoil hat, but I do feel that way sometimes, that there's a little puppet master up there, marionette puppet just pulling the strings, and we're told where to focus our outrage. I mean, if you think I'm crazy, just think about this. Before the George Floyd incident, there were people concerned about injustices towards black people. And it's always kind of been there, bubbling in the surface in the background. But as soon as that happened, the news all pointed their cameras at that, all pointed your attention at that, and then social media spread that. And then not only now is it a national outrage, it's an international outrage, a global outrage. And I don't think that would have happened if it weren't for social media. Now guys, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying that this is a bad movement per se. I think as long as it's peaceful and it's productive, we should address societal issues. That's a good thing. Weeding out corruption out of police force is a good thing. I want a strong, healthy police force. I also don't want people to burn and loot and kill. I think both of those things would be good if we address that. But there is a tremendous amount of power behind what's going on right now, and who wouldn't want to abuse that? What evil person wouldn't want to take control of that much power over the minds of people? It just makes sense, right? You can control the minds of people through social media, through the news. You'd want to latch onto that. It's even gotten to the point where it's not just about individuals, it's about companies. If companies don't toe the line and agree with certain things, they could be attacked. Can you imagine an entire company being canceled? But that's the kind of thing that we're seeing. Even Nintendo, I love Nintendo games. I think they're a lot of fun. Back in 2017, they said that, hey, we're non-political. We just want to create smiles. You know, basically let us do our work without having to interfere with current events. Now in 2020, they're on board. They're posting political stuff because they cave to pressure. And a lot of people are caving to pressure. And that's what concerns me. It's not because a movement is bad per se. It's that people are disingenuous about how they're reacting to things. It's not out of sincerity, it's out of fear. They don't want to get caught. So again, I have a big mouth. I like to post things. I like to get in it with people and share my opinions just as much as the next person. But again, it's just too much of a temptation for me. My wife is keeping her Facebook account for the time being. She's a lot more graceful with things, so I think she'll be okay for the time being. But yeah, you never know. So moving over to the YouTube side of things, why am I keeping my YouTube account and not my Facebook account or Instagram or anything like that? Well, I always believed in the phrase, a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth 1,000,000 more. I think video supplies a lot more context, body language. It's not limited to 140 characters. It is a bit ironic though, because YouTube has removed our comments. Many of you have been with our channel for a while, understand why. It had to do with child predators. I wanted to filter my comments, but YouTube said, no, we get to filter your comments. It's been a long kind of battle. But in a nutshell, I've been censored, or our comments have been censored because of YouTube. So there's a little bit of irony behind that, but our videos still work. Now I am aware that Facebook and Instagram and they have videos as well. But I don't think that's their main method of transportation or their main MO. YouTube, the whole purpose behind that is video, whereas Facebook, Twitter, obviously they're more focused on the text. And if you think about it, that's really old technology. It's kind of like the telegram or the carrier pigeon. There's so little context there in the grand scheme of things, but people now are being judged for something under 140 characters, and their whole life can be ruined. Which is filled with millions of words and actions. It's been reduced to that one tweet that people are judging everyone on. And self-censoring, there's a difference between self-censoring and someone else censoring you. I don't want you guys to think that I'm a coward or I've lost my voice because I'm no longer on Facebook. This is something I chose to do. I feel it's right. I've prayed about it. I feel a lot of peace surrounding it. I feel like a burden has been lifted. I'm just amazed at how much time I waste on Facebook too. Like late at night, you'll be there for 2 hours. It's almost like muscle memory. You're just doing this and then you're writing comments without even thinking. And even that alone has kind of scared me. I'll be a more productive individual, I believe, without Facebook in my life. I can't speak for everyone. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying for me, I think it's gonna make a big change. Okay, so and as for my friends on the Autism Family Facebook page, you're probably wondering like, well, where are we gonna talk to you? Where are we gonna comment? I'm just gonna migrate all of that energy over to Patreon. If you're on Facebook, you're already on Patreon because we have a $1 pay gate there to keep out the riffraff and the trolls. We're gonna move everything over to Patreon and we're gonna post messages there and photos and things like that. It just makes more sense anyway not to have like several social media things unless that's our entire business, our model, but it's not. I have a full-time job, Brittany works too. I just think it would simplify things to just move things back into our eggs into the Patreon basket and just focus on there for now. And before I close, I just want to say to you, I know I'm a broken record. Friends and family on Facebook probably get sick of me saying this, but please read and live the Constitution. I believe that is the best document ever written by any government body, any group of individuals when it comes to governing, to basically keeping things from complete anarchy. At least read the Bill of Rights. I'll post those on screen. I think if we live them, and even if you're not an American, I think those words still apply. I think people everywhere should have free speech. People everywhere should have due process. I believe everyone should have an ability to defend themselves. Clearly, with the police force being fully occupied with this current movement, and police leaving, and police being defunded, and some police being killed, and some police creating more brutality, it's just a mess right now, and I think people should be able to defend themselves. I think people should have a right not to have their house invaded in the middle of the night without a warrant, so on and so forth. There's so many human rights there that don't just apply to Americans, but to everybody. And I think we really need to get behind that, because if we don't, we're just going to see complete control and complete dominance by the people who are not our friends. They do not have our best interests in mind. They just want control and power. There are people like that. You've all met a Karen in your life or two, and they make your lives miserable. It could be a boss, it could be, you know, a CEO, it could be a cop, whoever, I don't know. But you've all met people like that. And then, what's the character? Dolores.
Umbridge.
Is it Dolores Umbridge?
From Harry Potter.
From Harry Potter. That is what I'm getting at. That is what society is becoming, is what's the name?
Rules.
The Ministry.
Yeah, the Ministry of Defense or whatever.
So yeah, that's what I'm getting at, is this whole thing is becoming like the ministry control, right? She goes around and she posts all these declarations, all these new rules, all this new legislation all over the wall, and people are losing control, and there's always a reason to post new legislation and control. She always has a reason behind it, some outrage. And that's what I feel like, is the puppet masters are a bunch of Dolores Umbridges who are just going around saying, well, we need to fix this, we need to fix that.
For your own good.
Yeah, for your own good, for your own safety. Guys, I'm just telling you, it's a game, and we're losing it. And that's why I'm cutting my strings. Hope that makes sense. And the last thing I want to say is how much we love all of you. My wife, me, my kids, we love all of you. We love all of God's children, regardless of race, creed, religion, whatever. I don't care. All life has value. All life. And we want to know how much we deeply care about all of you. And I'm sorry to be leaving Facebook. I'm sorry to be leaving family and friends. You can contact me in other ways. I just really do feel good about this. It's the right thing to do at the time. And again, things might change in the future, but I hope for a long time I'm able to keep my feet out of those waters. And I wish you the best. God bless.